Hi, this is Jardine, and if you're looking for a great publication on the history of the Beach Boys, check out Endless Summer Quarterly magazine. Thanks, ESQ, for all your years of support.
Hi, I'm David Beard. Welcome to another edition of Good Vibrations, a Beach Boys program. And today I'm joined by a good buddy and an esteemed guest, Matt Jardine. And Matt, I'd like to begin today by one of the things that when reading about the upcoming tour, I got really excited, of course. But I wanted to kind of go back and look at the longevity of your history with the Beach Boys, just generally over the years. And when I went and took a look at it, I was really pleasantly reminded and not surprised, just pleasantly reminded of how long you've been around. And, not from behind the scenes, you started. So I want to remind some people, I know this story, but I want to remind people how you got into the touring band, because initially you weren't a touring band member. You were kind of a gopher, right?
Go for it.
A gopher. So how did that? Because I think people have seen, just like Carney and Wendy and Adam and Carl B. Wilson and Justin and Jonah through the years. We've seen photos of all of you at different times on stage joining your parents when you were really young. So how did that transition for you happen from becoming going really young to a teenager and then getting involved in the touring part of things?
I never meant to get involved with the touring part of things because I always looked at it as something very separate. It's like that's what they do. It's like on a level, like, not having any real uh, concept of just the inner workings of just putting on a tour, much less the music business, which I still don't understand. But um, uh, well, because it's business and it's not music, but um, it's it just got to a point where I needed I needed like a summer job, but I wanted to be out on the road too because I enjoyed kind of being on the road. I enjoyed the energy, and so I asked our tour manager at the time, Elliot Lott,
Mhm.
if there was any kind of an opening that I could help with, and he said immediately said yes, definitely. And as strange as it seems, I mean, they were shorthanded. And the reason being is that their touring was so heavy and so chaotic from late spring up until early fall that they just needed extra bodies to help with all the little gopher type stuff
Mhm.
that inevitably would fall through the cracks. And you're talking about a band that's moving just about every single day from city to city, hotel to hotel, venue, airport, venue, hotel, sometimes airport, venue, airport, hotel in one day. That's a lot of moving, with 20 with a 15 person entourage, so or 20 people depending on who families and stuff who was out. So they needed that help, and so yeah, I got pulled right in, and that was thankless, hard, mind-numbing work, you know, and I got pretty good at it towards the end. I mean, it's like juggling chainsaws, because not only are you dealing with all that stuff, but then you're dealing with five bosses, not one boss, five bosses, you know. So
One of them's your dad,
what?
and one of them's your dad.
And one of them was my dad. That's right. So, but that just made it even more complicated, So, so,
Your
but
way.
I learned a ton about people, about myself. I was able to, you know, get to know Dennis a little bit, before he passed, and a little bit better, rather. Meaning I got to spend more time with him,
Mhm.
and there's funny stories with him, and just, it was like a traveling carnival kind of. It just kind of had that feel to it. And
What What year would that have been then? 83?
That was, I think I
Two?
went out in the summer of 81, 82, and 83.
Okay.
So
Okay.
literally, like as soon as I got out of school, I might have a week or two, and then they'd say, "Come on out, we need you." Here you go. Here's your road cash. Here's your receipts, and go to work and help us out with the bellman and the bus and van and limo drivers, and help us with the daily troop movements, as we called it, troop movements. And
Huh.
yeah, yeah, it was a whole between Elliot Lott, Joel Gast, and myself. It was we had to, all of us, know what each of us was doing. So we had a troop movement sheet every day, what time we were getting up, what needed to be done, blah blah blah. And it was very unglamorous, for sure.
So did you do that consecutively through the 80s? Like every spring, did you go back? Like 85, 86, 80s, or were you on a
After Dennis passed, I think I went out that summer in 83.
Mhm.
And I think in 84 and 85, that's when I got into high school sports. And so I needed to be, and they had someone else lined up with the gopher job. So and then, but I would I think I kind of came and went a little bit, if they needed help for a couple of weeks or something like that, I'd go out.
Yeah.
But I started getting more social on the home front, and touring is hard, especially when you're doing that kind of stuff. It is hard. It's just hard on the body, on the nervous system, even when you're a young kid. And speaking of which, I was a kid. I was
Mhm.
15 and 16 years old when I was out there doing that stuff. And you want to talk about a fish out of water, and not fitting in and any of that stuff. I mean, I didn't really have any friends that I could hang out with. But that being said, I was so busy, it almost didn't matter. But I did feel kind of like a fish out of water, especially like if there was a day off. And so Mike Miros kind of took me under his wing a little bit, and he'd take me, we'd go out and run and do stuff like that. So that was fun. But
Mhm.
yeah, it was a great experience.
You mentioned Dennis's unfortunate passing. I've, the guys, Mike, Carl, Brian, your dad, have all kind of, Bruce, have all spoken to some degree or another publicly about Dennis's passing. How did that affect you?
It affected me deeply because um, he was like a family member to me. He was like an uncle, kind of like the like the black sheep uncle that you love but you don't get to see a lot. And he was kind of like that. It's like, yeah, Dennis, and it's like, whoo, wow. When you're done, it's like, oh, regroup here. He was a ball of energy. But there was a sweetness and a softness and yet a raggedness about him at the same time. And he just exuded energy. He had so much charisma. Even, you could just sit there, like Val Kilmer or like, Steve McQueen or something, and just, just oozing, it's just like, damn, I want some of that. So, um, first, first person that was really, truly close to me that passed away, that I felt close to. And so that really, as a 16-year-old kid, that rattled me. And then of course going to his funeral, that was just like, waterworks. So
Mm. Mhm. Mhm.
so
A few years go by, and one of the things that I think a lot of Beach Boy fans really enjoy, myself included, was the staged. I think it was on the Universal lot. I think the 1989 summer show that they did, which included
around the campfire, right?
yeah, the campfire stuff. I just recently was looking at that again, and that's such. What's really special to me. well, it's family and friends. It's a staged fireplace. I mean, fire. It's not a real fire, but Brian is so kind of on, and he's so engaged, and he's challenging Mike. He's it's so special to see that, and to see Carl next to Brian, and on the guitar, and everybody just kind of joining in was, even though that was on a lot, was that special for you? Because I think every fan, just like the end of the new documentary where they're all at Paradise Cove and we all wanted more of that. That's a special thing to see. And for the 89 special, that's the thing that stood out to me, was that even though I know it was staged, it's still really beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Um, for me, it was not having done a lot of camera work and that type of stuff. Personally, it was awkward. But
Okay.
you just, because of that, it's staged, and
Mhm.
we're sitting with a bunch of people we really don't know. I mean, there's a lot of stand-ins and extras and things like that. It's like,
Okay.
oh, you're rolling, yeah, let's sing a song, and it's just kind of, it's kind of like play acting a little bit.
Mhm.
And I don't think we really, there was a lot of, it was just kind of riffing. It's like, hey, they just let the cameras roll and let's sing a song, and so, but the experience was cool. Just being there on the lot, and just watching all the workings of what was going on behind the cameras, and having Brian there was cool. I don't know, I can't remember, the energy was kind of funny a little bit, but it all worked out great. It was, I can't tell you why the energy was funny, but it just kind of
Yeah.
was, and not in a
Well,
funny haha kind of way. It was kind of
because- yeah.
Beach Boy funny,
Right. It's historically almost always there. So when it's not there, that's when you really have something special, right? When when the strange awkwardness is not present.
But
That's what
that might have just been me, I mean, I was a younger guy, and
that's fair. But that was also a time when a certain somebody was in Brian's life, a certain doctor. So
oh yeah, yeah, and that might have had something to do with it, because Dr. Landy was always a very, um, just not a positive presence when Brian would come out on the road during that period. That was uncomfortable. That was
mhm.
uncomfortable because they always had cameras rolling, and the little handheld video cameras are always on. There's always a tripod in the middle there. You come in and Brian's in there, tripod's on all the time. It was like Big Brother watching.
Uh,
It was weird. And um and Landy was weird. I mean, he was weird to me when he found out I was Al's son. I was doing my gopher work, and Elliot sent me downstairs. Hey, Brian and Entourage just got in. Let's go. I need you to go down there and make sure they're comfortable. They have everything they need. I said, okay, and walk down, go downstairs, take the elevator downstairs to their suite, or upstairs to their suite rather. And I go in, and I'm immediately treated like just stand over here. Finally, I said, hey, I'm with Elliot Lott. I'm with the Beach Boys management. Da, da, da. My name's Matt Jardine. He said, Jardine, you Al's son? And Landy came over and said, hey, what do you want? What can we do for you? He said, hey, I'm just down here. Elliot sent me down just to say hi. And, da, da, da. And he said, oh, you're Jardine's son, huh? And he looked at me like that. He said, he kind of sized me up and down. And he said, I tell you what, you tell Elliot Lott that I'm going to make life as hard as possible for him while we're out here. Okay. And he gave me this big Cheshire cat, toothy, weird snake oil salesman smile. And I just wanted to and of course I am completely confused by this response. And I said, okay, we'll see you later. I turned around and left and went and told Elliot. And Elliot was like, okay, that's how he wants to play it. All right. And it was just, that's the kind of person he was. He loved to shake cages and just shock and awe people.
mm.
Strange dude.
Yeah, yeah. So what was your official, you wouldn't the year, the month, if you can remember the date, when did you officially join the touring group?
90, well, I was out there, I guess officially it would be 91, summer of 91. And that's when we did that one-off um, in Helsinki, Finland for this enormous outdoor festival. 700,000 people outside.
Wow.
I think Helsinki has a population of 5.5 million. So this was a significant portion of their population. And when their summer starts, those people party like rock stars, man. I'm telling you, because they only have a limited amount of daylight before, So, and there were people, it was like Mardi Gras times 100, except with about 1,000 more times people. It was nuts. It was mind blowing how many people were out there. It was uh, this massive festival type stage with a sound system that would rattle your fillings from 100 miles away, and just out, and you just looked out over a sea of people. It was just people as far as I could see, and the buildings, or people on top of the buildings, trees, people hanging out of the tree. It was like there are people everywhere, and that was my first professional show. But I had been performing with them for a couple of years on and off before that, because when Stamos left after the writer's strike ended, Carl asked that I go up and start filling in on little bits and pieces of the show while I was doing my backstage stuff as well, because I was still gophering and trying to wrangle drivers who wanted to see the show. Then I'd lose drivers. It's like, oh my God, we're going to get stuck in show traffic and, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, so, but yeah, long answer to your short question. There you go.
Must have been incredible. Well, it sounds incredible. I mean, that many people, to be in front of that many people. And at that time, were your nine vocals just doing background parts at that moment?
Uh, when I did that was the first show after Adrian Baker was let go.
Okay.
So before that, I was just kind of filling in where needed, if
Mhm.
needed. Um, but that was my first show where I was singing all the Brian stuff.
Oh, okay. Now
So
I
we had a
recall.
couple of weeks, I had a couple of weeks. We did a private show in Phoenix 2 weeks previous, Phoenix, Arizona.
Mhm.
And um, sorry, I keep looking away. My the wheels in my mind are slowly starting to get moving here. Um, I was approached by Matt Shepard, our road manager, and he said, "Hey, Carl wants you to stay over a day, and they want to audition you tomorrow in Carl's suite." And it's like, audition me for what? I said, well, they're letting Adrian go. This was his last show. They said, oh, geez, are they going to hire someone else? What do they do? And no, they want to audition you to take his spot. And it's like, oh my, okay. So I went in, and the next day, and it was just in Carl's suite. He had an acoustic guitar, and Mike and Bruce and Dad, and Carl and myself, and we just ran through the set, you know. And then Carl said, great job. You sound great. Uh, you have any questions, call me, and we'll see you in 2 weeks in Finland, and that was it. And then he called me at home a couple of times just to see how I was doing, and if I had any questions. I said, no, I'm totally fine. I mean, I have been on the road with you for like the past 3.5 years. I know the music pretty good at this point. I didn't say that, of course, but but he was really sweet, and really, um, I think, believed in me at that point that I could do it, you know. And then and at that point, I'd been taking voice lessons, and really working hard to try to get up to speed, because that was something that he insisted on. He said, hey, if you're going to sing with us, you really need to just learn how to project, learn how to sing, learn how to use your voice. And so I did. I just dove right in.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Now,
have, I have him and my dad to thank, definitely for just sticking with me and standing behind me, and helping me get my feet under me.
mhm. Yeah, I loved, you know this well, but for the sake of this particular video, I'm going to repeat it. I knew of you, but I had not seen you perform that I can remember, uh, until, the standout show was the first show of the box set tour, which was a really short tour that went November, December of
Yeah.
1993. The first show was in Charlotte. I was at that show, and that's when you did Hushabye. You took the lead for Hushabye. Uh, and any Beach Boys cover. I mean, they're so good at cover songs, uh, particularly your dad. But I'm a big fan of Beach Boy cover songs, and so when you took that lead, um, it was that song, and maybe the falsetto on "Don't Worry, Baby," but I remember very specifically and fondly when you took the lead on "Hushabye," looking at being drawn to you on stage and just saying, "Well, son of a bitch," just like wow,
You, right? Yeah.
and and in those days, this I always have to kind of remind people, or I make it a point to just say this. In those days, we didn't have Google. In those days, we didn't have this capacity to just look up whatever it was we wanted to look up. There wasn't a YouTube. We didn't have this place to go to look at videos of people doing things. So there, for me, it was such a profound moment to kind of discover you during this very meaningful show, because that's when Carl went from guitar over to the keyboard and did wonderful with the spotlight on him, and I just was frankly in heaven. I mean, the whole presentation of you guys, everything everyone did for that show,
It
including
was it was magic. It was magic.
yeah, it was just like wow. And for me as a fan, for you to be included in that just made it even a more profound thing for me to kind of be aware of you in that moment and experience that show all in the same night was just it's a very meaningful memory, a great marker for me in that.
Thanks. Thanks. Yeah, yeah, me too. It was for me too. I missed that. I um the rehearsals leading up to that were so fun. They were
There,
so fun
right?
to sing. Say that again?
You guys did that at your dad's place in the barn, right?
Well, we did some rehearsals in Big Sur at the barn, and then we did we might have gone out somewhere early. Either we rehearsed also in LA, or maybe we did some other stuff
Okay.
here and there before the tour got going, and it was just a blast. It was so fun just being able to sing and really have uh I mean, you could hear it in all the voices. It's just everything just rang out because we could all hear each other,
Mhm.
and it was just not that we can't hear each other, but you sing differently when you're singing, with a band behind you. There's just a different type of projection that happens, and it's almost like we could all just settle into what was going on around us and behind us as singers, and that's what just made it all just shine a little more, and I mean, Carl singing wonderful. I mean, and add some music. I mean, it was perfect. It was just it wasn't perfect. I mean, there were little flubs and mistakes, but those were great too. It was really, really, there was just a certain type of energy during that 2 week run that all of us wanted more. The band, it's like, are we going to do this summer in the spring? And we got the back to meat and potatoes. It's like, gosh, shit, man, come on, So, you know, but
Well, that
when you're doing fairs and stuff,
right,
it
right,
doesn't translate so well.
right, right. So the following year, I was you guys you were with the band when you played Knights. It was after a baseball game here, the Charlotte Knights, and was backstage for the first time for me, and I heard someone working with you down the hall doing notes, which I would then later realize when you came out down the hall, it was you and Carl. Carl was down the hall working with you on notes, and I don't know what song it was that you were working on, but it was just so. When I realized it, it's another thing where I went, oh man, I'm going to remember this. I'm going to remember that I got to hear that even though it was just down the hall from me and I wasn't observing it, I'm so grateful that I got to even hear it and hear you working with Carl. That was
Yeah, I remember that day. Um, I had asked Carl because there was a rub in the harmony stack. And I said, I don't know where, if I should go up or if I should go down or where, or someone else should change. And I should it was just kind of figuring out where I was supposed to go. And he said, remind me of that and we'll go over it, um, and it also might've been how I was singing it. I just wanted some clarification from him, you know,
Mhm.
because he was the one that he was always on in my mix. So I would literally sing with Carl because he was the next voice down from me. And so for most of the show, I'd be singing two-part harmony with Carl, and in the parts where we were actually singing background stuff together and I wasn't up doing a falsetto part or whatever. But so it was important that I lock in with him, you know. So that was one of those moments that you witnessed.
Talk about the privilege of working with Carl.
Uh, at the time I didn't I I was so locked into just trying to keep up, you know,
Mhm.
and trying to really just not only just keep up, but be in lockstep with them as singers, because that was my job, and man, you want to talk about dangling in the wind, I mean, you don't want to make the Beach Boys sound bad, if so
You
uh,
get the big
singing
guy,
those
right?
parts. So it was really important that I always be really, really focused. And I could see Carl's focus and how focused he was, and I appreciated that because sometimes I'm guilty of having an extreme lack of focus. So just being dialed in when I was out on the road and with my assignments. And so I really appreciated how dialed in he was, and that says something for someone who's been singing the same music on stage for at that time 25 or 30 years, that he was still not just coasting, that he wanted to keep the quality up there, and so that was like playing basketball with Michael Jordan, it's just he lifts everyone up around him, and I kind of felt that Carl did that for me and for a lot of us. He just kind of demanded excellence or your best at least. So yeah, so it was really especially looking back now on his contributions to the band, not just as a band leader, but obviously as a songwriter and a producer and vocalist, and I mean, guitar player. I mean, his rhythm was amazing. His attitude was great. It was very gentle soul, and very kind, and was just kind of always there, You know, if I needed something from him, he wouldn't hesitate to say, "What do you need?" You know.
Mhm.
So and you know, I was part of the band, but I was also a kid that he's known my entire life. I mean, you know, his his and Annie's you know, signatures are in my baby book over here. You know, I mean, it's, you know, so there's that kind of a dynamic too, where it's like, you know, I have to kind of put all that aside and really focus on him as a professional and not more as like a family, you know, a quasi family figure type of thing, you know. So it was there was that kind of dynamic too that was at first kind of awkward to navigate, but once I got dialed in, I just focused on what I was there to do.
Well, it still shows to this day. Uh, it really does. So I wanted to touch on, you've mentioned him already, but I wanted to touch on a few people who are no longer here, other than Dennis and Carl. And you mentioned Mike Miros.
Mm-hmm.
Mike left us quite a while ago. Um, but I knew Mike as a really funny person, a really gifted keyboardist who I think really helped, for lack of for the best word that comes to mind is rejuvenate the stage show because of all the programming that he did in his setup. I don't know the correct, you know, actual keyboards that he used, but he really, I think, you were just talking about being dialed in and focused and really executing for the sake of the fans. I thought Mike Miros was just, you know, the right guy for the job. And I was hoping that you might, you know, share an experience with Mike or something.
He he held down such, I mean, talk about a guy with, I mean, that was a huge chair to fill with all of the voicings that he was playing. He was always playing, and he would be playing two keyboards at once most of the time, you know, different sounds, different layers, and and on different keyboards with different patches. And I mean, and uh his his contribution was incredible. And when he wasn't there for whatever strange reason, you noticed it right away. It was just like, ay, yay, yay, yay. His feel, hit that, his feel was incredible. I mean, talk about being locked in. He was locked in, but not in a rigid way, obviously. He was just locked in on a whole different plane, you know, and just his rhythm and his feel and the textures of the sounds that he programmed uh, were rarely. I mean, he was limited by the technology of the time, but man, I mean it was something. It was a sight to see, you know, and he was wonderful, and just a wonderful, warm guy. You know, just so wicked sense of humor, wicked sense of humor. So I and just sweet, just a family man, a good man, you know. And that was a tough loss. That came out of left field. That was rough. They all are.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
I'm still trying to understand and process Billy and Jeff, and that's what I wanted to talk about next.
yeah.
Billy is quite the character,
Yes.
um, um, full of whimsy, stories. But what was it like? And of course, he made his own Know the Road videos and stuff like that. So anyone who's seen those has a sense of Billy, and anyone who watched his week when during that pandemic, he started his Saturday night video shows that he did. So I think people really got a sense of what he was like as a person because he was what you see is what you get. I mean, he was always like that, which I really almost most everybody in the Beach Boys world is like that, which is a consistency that I love. Um, so, is there something that comes? You know, when I mention Billy, what comes to mind?
Oh, oof. Just his warmth. You know, he was just again. You know, Carl. That he was another part of my mix. Carl's guitar, Carl's voice, Billy's piano. And Billy was like my North Star, on stage, just musically, because of his rock solid playing. He just a lot of quarter notes, you know. But man, I mean, that just helped lock me in, and I could really sink into the pocket with that, and feel the voices and how they moved around and flowed around the music, and Billy was a huge part of that musically, just with his playing. And but he's another one that I've known since. He'd always remind me if I ever started asking him a question, or if I ever like started getting on his nerves, he'd say, "Don't you remember, mister? I've known you since you were in diapers. Don't you try to pull one over on me," and a little bit. And he's right. He has known me since I was in diapers, so so but we hung out on the road. I got to spend a little time with him on the the when he was subbing in during the Pet Sounds tours in
Oh,
2018.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he was so laid back and just wonderful, just a wonderful, warm person, and with great stories. Great stories. He has just tons. See, I think of him in the present tense, because I don't really feel like he's gone. He just feels like he's on a
Hey, I don't. It just doesn't feel that way. It's odd to even talk it like.
in the past tense. Yeah, it's just, well, that's the type of personality he was, and he was really he would just was there was Billy was bigger than life in a lot of ways, and was always the life of the party, and always cracking jokes and doing
Mm.
his Billy-isms. And that's where Foskett got most of his jokes, was he ripped them from Billy, between Billy, John Candy, and and maybe Chevy Chase or something. That was basically Foskett's entire bit right there, so so
That's funny.
but Billy was just I loved him deeply, and was always kind of, I tried to check in on him when I could, and just, hey, how you doing, and I miss you, how are you doing, and what are you doing, and took him out to lunch when I went through Vegas once, and I you know tried to get him on some gigs at one point, but it didn't work, but because he was having his heart issues and all that stuff. But um, he's just I miss him terribly. I really do. Yeah.
And so Jeffrey Foskett.
I didn't have much of a
Time was
connection with
you guys
Jeff.
were, yeah, you guys weren't really in the different touring bands at the same time. There was kind of like,
I was there around the Dennis years when he was doing the Brian chair, you know,
yeah,
but he was he was with the band and doing his thing, and that was part of the not fitting in part, because I was a kid, so there was kind of an age gap there, in the beginning. And then but there was always friendliness and goodwill, and he was a good egg. He was a good egg. Complicated individual, but he was a good egg.
do you, when you go on tour now, do you still, I mean, between nervousness and excitedness, which do you tend to, whether it's you're doing a trio show with your dad, or you're doing, the full stage with Probin Gregory and Randell Kirsch and Debbie Scher and Bobby Figueroa on drums, if you're doing that configuration, do you still get nervous? Is there any type of nervousness ahead of time?
The only nervousness comes if I feel like we're not prepared for something. Like if I wish we had had an extra day of rehearsal,
Okay.
or if maybe, uh, yeah, I'm maybe, for me personally, if I'm really busy right up to the point, if I don't feel like I'm prepared enough, like is my voice going to hold out, or which I did is never an issue, but sometimes if I'm tired, I feel it, and then I'm not in my comfort, my happy place on stage, So it's just little things, little isms like that, or yeah, it's not really. I mean, I guess I would be nervous if I was performing in front of someone that I really admired, saying, yeah, I hope I look okay, and I hope I sound okay out there, and like I did a private. My dad's band did a private down in um, Cabo San Lucas, and Vince Gill and his wife, what's his wife's name? Dang it. Oh crap. Sorry. Anyways, incredible singer. And I was nervous then because
Okay.
Vince Gill, that rattled me, singing in front of Vince Gill. And that was just like, oh my God. So anyways,
He is a great singer.
he's an
Uh,
amazing singer.
so you've toured with the Beach Boys, Mike's Endless Summer Band,
Yes.
Brian's band,
Yes.
and Dad's band. So you've
Yes.
been kind of across the spectrum of different configurations and different types of shows. What's kind of looking at the full spectrum of all of it? What part of the show do you really enjoy the most? What because across that spectrum of shows, you've done all sorts of different types of songs. The ones that everyone would anticipate that would be a part of the list, like a greatest hits, but you've also gotten into deeper catalog things. So what's the most enjoyable thing for you?
I think the Pet Sounds tours were the most, they're just so, they were so epic. I mean, the shows, the production. I mean, Brian's team really did his production and his staff, his management. They really put together a great show. And not only that, just a great group of people, you know. Um, and I might, and obviously the Unplugged tour. That probably tops the Pet Sound stuff for me, just because at that time it was so magical for me. But the Pet Sound stuff being more recent, back in 2000, what, 16, 17, 18, that was pretty amazing too, and being able to go to Europe and do the festivals on multiple occasions, and I didn't think I would ever get a chance to do that again. I thought my run was kind of petered out, and I was okay with that. And then I got the call, so to have another go at it was really rewarding and fun. So that was cool, and getting to spend some time with Brian too, which was great because he's getting up there in years,
Uh-huh.
and my dad. God,
Yeah, I know. It's still it surprises me now just thinking about it. I just turned 60, so I know you're gonna hit the big one soon. December, if I recall. So
I I got a couple more years to go there, bud. But
okay, that's right. I'm a little bit older than you. I forget. But yeah, it's pretty interesting because recorded music, is something that people will just be able to hear as long as there's an earth. We'll always hear this music. But there is a shelf life to every living being, and it's so interesting that your dad, Mike and Brian and Bruce, and here they are in their 80s, and they're still bringing this wonderful, meaningful music to the fans. That it's just I don't I'm sure none of them thought about this.
oh, no, they didn't.
When they started in the 60s, oh, we're gonna be doing this when we're 80 or whatever. isn't what's the song? We'll be doing it in our 80s. What?
Well, I mean, my mom and dad started a horse ranch back in the mid 70s because Arabian horses were the big thing then, and it was kind of there was a lot of money in that, and they thought that would be a good jumping off point when the band breaks up, because they didn't see this going very very far. I mean, I don't know if anybody really did, but
Hmm,
go figure. Then you know, you know,
wild.
life and
Wow.
the universe have different plans, so. But I think it's important, like you were saying, it's this music it's uplifting. It's,
Mhm.
as Brian says, spiritual, and it is. I mean, there is not to get you know too out there with it, but it gets inside you, and it in a way that um, well, I mean, all music does that to a certain extent. It brings back memories, and I can tell you how many people have come up after a show and said, "Boy, when you sang 'Don't Worry, Baby,' that reminded me of my first date with my wife." You know, when we were just going out. And they would just be beaming. They'd just be beaming. They just wanted to come and tell me, "I didn't write the song. It's not my song. I just performed it." But it means so much to people in the moment, and that's a huge gift to be able to. It's the giving and the receiving end of it. It's really special. It's nothing
And
like it, I'll tell you.
yeah, well, that's right. Anyone who knows the Beach Boys catalog, yeah, can attest to what you just said. I mean, it's everything. It's fun. It's meaningful. It's spiritual. It's for me at times has been it you know when I discovered the Smile material through bootlegs in the late 80s, I just was changed. I was like, wow, how is this even a recorded event? Like, what am I hearing here? Like, Cabin Essence is like my number one song because for me, when I listen to it, I feel like I'm listening to like a Norman Rockwell painting of America. It's just like this great colorful tapestry that is somehow been shaped into a recording. And I just adore the music of the Beach Boys for that reason. I feel like it's a great colorful pastiche of of notes that marry together and move us. And it's not inexplicable if you're able to understand the power of music. You could, you know,
Yeah, and another thing that is not talked about a lot is the fact that they were kind of expected to keep singing about cars and girls and surf and all that stuff, which is great if you're in your late teens and early 20s, but um, they were growing as artists by leaps and bounds, and they were and think about the society that was changing like at light speed around them, and that period of time, the artistry that was happening around them as well. I mean, what a fertile, rich period of life, not just for them as young men with families, and they're starting to have kids and stuff, but just what was going on in the world around them, and the unbelievable variety of music that was happening, from what was happening in Motown, to what was happening in, all over California and all over. I mean, just you talk to the Wrecking Crew guys, and you would talk the sessions they would do in 1 week, even in a day, where they'd go from like, doing a, I don't know, like a Sly tune, a Sly song, recording session. Then they go over, that evening, and they'd work on a Mamas and Papas tune, and I mean, just what an incredible period to be alive in as an artist.
Gary Griffin
So
Gary Griffin told me, I don't know when it was. It's been a while, but I remember having a conversation with him, and we were talking about 1965. He had a Beatles picture sleeve. It may have been paperback writer, but we were just talking about 65 because that's the year I was born. And he said, Dave, it was just so amazing to wake up every day and turn on the radio and hear something so different and so cool than the day before.
Yeah.
And I just thought, man, that must have, it just to your point, that's what everything you were just saying just reminded me of that. Just that this idea that you could wake up and music could be so different and so as good as the day before, but different in a different way that you're like, oh my, what's this now? Kind of and it wasn't, sure, radio stuff would get played on the radio because it would be by a popular group or and it would become popular and reach the charts or whatever. But still, things are happening artistically that in the scope of this AM radio and the charts that just were so different, and then when you get to Buffalo Springfield and the stuff they were doing, particularly for what it's worth, and the songs that Dylan was doing, it's just, and the bird, it's just so amazing, all the stuff that just kind of came out of that pocket of time. It'll never be matched again. It's just all it will ever do, thankfully and hopefully, will influence. Hopefully continue to influence. The Lemon Twigs are pretty dialed into that stuff. So I wanted to talk to you lastly about your music. So what's on the horizon for you and your music coming out?
Well, what's on the horizon is that I'm actually going to be releasing it, which is wonderful. So it's been sitting on hard drives for quite a while. I just got them mastered late last year, and
Okay.
I'm getting ready to release them within the next 2 or 3 months. So, and
Oh,
I'm just gonna release them as singles, and it's gonna
okay.
be released digitally at first, and then I'll put an EP together after, or I might be able to put a whole album together, at some point, after the fact.
But little drips along the way, so fans can kind of get acclimated to, and hopefully new people will discover your work.
That would be nice.
So
Yeah.
is songs like Faded?
I've got songs called No Words, Mystery, How Can I, Spinning Round, Just Your Smile. Just Your Smile has my dad and Wendy Wilson on it. And then Faded. Faded will be the last one, probably, because I'm still working on that. So,
If I'm remembering correctly, that you had, when we did the ESQ CD back whenever that was, I think '06, that was something that you had kind of emotionally attached to Carl.
yeah, it was just kind of what I had. It's really a song about my grandparents passing,
Oh,
but
that's right. That's right. That's right.
but
Yeah.
it's a very, for me, a very soulful song, and not a downer in any way. It's just reminiscing, and it's it's pretty edgy with lots of vocals on it, and that was just a rough demo that I submitted to you, surprisingly enough, but it's all I had. So
Yeah.
um,
No, it's a beautiful song. It's a
thank
good
you,
song. It's a good song.
thank you.
Um,
So I'm excited to do that, and to finally get these things, to set them off, just to release them into the wild, and finally get that monkey off my back, because I've got 2 albums worth of more material in demo form that I need to start working on. So
Good
yeah,
to, I'm glad you found that inspiration to do that.
yeah, it was just kind of a necessary outlet, especially after I left the Beach Boys, um, and after Carl's passing. It took me a number of years, honestly, to kind of recalibrate and
Hmm.
find out kind of who I was outside of all that. And it was a very uh, rich time artistically, and personally for me too. Just because um, all those relationships kind of go away in a large way, especially the way everything went down. The group kind of splintered, and Carl was gone, and It was just, it literally felt like the carpet had just been pulled out from under me. You know, it was just really emotionally wrenching. And also having such a close association with that band for so long, I kind of had to rethink a lot of stuff, you know. So, but it was all part of the growth process, you know. It was necessary. So,
Sure, sure.
yeah.
Well, Matt, this has been great. I'm grateful for your time. I know I think fans have a lot to look forward to, and anybody who's watching this, visit aljardine.com to kind of stay up to date on news from Al, and you'll be able to see tour dates once they're plugged in, so that you'll be able to go out and get a chance, an opportunity to see Al in concert with Matt being the shining star that he is on stage. And I know everyone will enjoy it. And hopefully, Matt, you'll have more people coming up to you after the show and thanking you for other songs as well.
Oh, yeah.
I appreciate you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. This is Brian Wilson, and I wanted to let everyone know about Endless Summer Quarterly. It's a great magazine. Subscribe today.